What's going on, draft fans? Welcome back to Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast. I'm your host, Russell Brown. I told you last week we had some things cooking. We had some guests coming on. We were getting in full draft mode here on the podcast. Last night we had Brock Hoffman on from Virginia Tech, talking with him. If you haven't checked it out, go rate, review, and subscribe to the Cover One NFL Draft Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, really wherever you get it, and listen to a great 30-minute interview. But to maybe even top it, I don't know. We'll see. We're gonna put him to the test here. My man Connor Rogers of BleacherReport.com with me. Connor, how we doing, brother? Thanks for taking some time to talk draft with me.
Oh, no problem, Russ, man. I'm excited to do it. I don't know if I'll be able to top Brock. It's going to be some big expectations, man, but I'm excited to catch up with you. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has been. And, we'll talk a little bit here. We'll get down to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. We'll talk for sure down there. We'll definitely have a couple beers wherever we have it, whether it's Veets or at Draft Picks, whatever bar we decide, we'll have a couple of brewskis for sure. But we got a lot of stuff to get into, and we got to start with away from the draft stuff, maybe the biggest news of the day. I don't care about Senior Bowl rosters or anything like this. I mean, my man Connor Rogers here has a new podcast coming out with a great colleague of the show, one of the best in the business, and Trevor Sikkema, host of the NFL Stock Exchange for Pro Football Focus. Connor, explain to us what this podcast means and when can we expect it and where can we find it?
Man, I'm so excited, and I appreciate you bringing it up because it's when you get off the ground, it's like, okay, now I got to spread the word. Believe it or not, I haven't done a full-time draft podcast, stick to football, shut down in October of 2020. So we're sitting here, we're in 2022 right now. We're sitting here, towards the end of January having that conversation. So it's been a little while, but I really wanted to wait for the right opportunity. Obviously, working with Trevor is a dream scenario because you don't expect to both be free agents in a sense at the same time. And Trevor got to PFF. I'm still at Bleacher Report full time, but I need a podcasting home, and it just all worked out. So for NFL Stock Exchange, we are going to be draft focused. Of course, we're still going to focus on the NFL and college football at times, with the draft being our main focus. And it's going to be dropping next Monday already. So as you and I sit here and record on a Wednesday night, it'll be dropping next Monday 3 times a week. I believe we'll have new shows out every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday on PFF's YouTube, on Apple Pods, Spotify, basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. So I'm excited to get back in the game, man. It's weird. It was weird for me last year, obviously still doing the draft full time because of being on the Bleacher Report desk all 3 days. It's not like I could just put aside every single scouting report, but it's just so much easier when you're talking about it for a million minutes a week. And I appear on plenty of shows and stuff, but when you have your own home to do it, you cover what you want. It's exciting. So yeah, man, I'm excited to get this thing going. We're gonna have a good time with it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, a lot of fun to listen to. So everybody listening to this, I know you got me a part of your rotation, but for sure add these two guys, these two gems to your rotation. But Connor, we got lots to get into tonight. We got the Shrine Bowl creeping up like next Thursday. It's crazy. And then we got the Senior Bowl after that, which we'll both be at. But the Shrine Bowl, they just came right out. They gave out the East and West rosters, and really from maybe give me 2 guys from the East roster and 2 guys from the West roster that you're most excited to maybe talk about or watch on NFL Network, breaking down the practices and really from your scouting reports and what you've seen so far. Maybe we'll start with the East. Who are 2 guys that you're really excited about?
Yeah, so with the East, I'm looking at the wide receiver group and Javon Hiley and, obviously Charleston Rambo, I think a name a lot of people are very familiar with just because he's bounced around. He was at Oklahoma and had some big moments. And then he goes to Miami as a transfer and has an incredible year, really is true breakout year in terms of production and consistency across the board for him. And when you look at Hiley, I don't know how you feel about this, Russ. I'm a little surprised Hiley is not with the Senior Bowl group. And now that's a really talented group. So I think it's obviously tough to crack into that. But when I watch Hiley, I just see somebody that teams are going to fall in love with because of his pro-ready routes. Obviously a lot of production, his ability to work the middle of the field, but he could just separate. That's the name of the game with him. And he's got quick feet as well. So I think, if those quarterbacks can get Hiley the ball, I think he'll be in a really, really good spot down there. So the East roster, what stands out to me is that wide receiver room. They have two guys that I think are going to shine down there. And, I don't know if they'll play themselves into day 2 picks. That's always a tough task for guys at the Shrine Week, but there's no reason those guys can't go early on day 3 and find themselves having a legitimate depth role at the NFL as rookies next year.
Absolutely. And I'm with you. I thought Hiley was going to end up going to the Senior Bowl as well. And I thought he was one of those valuable players that could end up there. And obviously he is at the Shrine, and maybe there'll be a late dropout or something and he'll end up there. I just don't see that happening because they're kind of happening at the same time. But I will say one player that I'm super excited about is I want to see Calvin Turner from Hawaii. I think he's one of the more versatile players. I'm really curious how he'll match up against some of those players on the West defense, but what he can do as a pass catcher, former receiver, he's got some skill position value to him from a punt returner. So I think as you enter into the kind of the skilled position conversation, I think you could add Calvin Turner into the mix. And another name as well, George Moore, the offensive lineman from Oregon. I could obviously talk about Brock Hoffman, who's on this East roster, but I think George Moore has got some technical sound ability that you love to see from an offensive lineman that has played left tackle and left guard. I think he's an interior offensive lineman. He can clean up some things. He did allow 6 sacks this past year, but I am intrigued with George Moore. But flipping from the East roster to the West roster, who is potentially that guy that maybe stands out to you, or those two guys that really stand out to you from an offensive or defensive perspective?
I'd start with Jack Jones, the defensive back out of Arizona State. I think with Jack, he's always been super, super talented. And, kind of a funny story way back in the day at Bleacher Report, when I was relatively new there, young in my career, I helped out at times with high school recruiting media that we did. And I was, I went out to California. It was the first time I ever went out to California. I was probably like 22, 23 years old. And we shot a video when Jack was deciding, he was down to like his top 5 schools. And obviously everybody knows he started out at USC, but so it's kind of funny, like how quick time goes and you just get older and older and more washed, right? As I sit here, I'm like, oh my God, Jack Jones is now at an all-star game. And I feel like it was just yesterday. I met him when he was like a junior or senior in high school. So I think for Jack, he's, obviously a little bit of a smaller corner, smaller defensive back, but he could play. There's no doubt he could play. He's a good athlete. He's pretty feisty. And I think, he's gotten really good coaching at Arizona State, and you've seen the improvement since that transfer. You've really seen him develop as a player. And then somebody on the offensive side of the ball in that West roster that I just enjoyed watching on weeknights this year is Clint Rakovich.
I knew you were going that direction.
Right? How can you not? I mean, really, when you look at this roster, just getting to, now I'm a big gambler on MACtion because honestly, there's just nothing going on those nights. And here in Jersey, obviously we could do it from the phone. And it's also the easiest way to make money. You just bet the overs in the beginning of the season and they all hit. And then Vegas adjusts, in week 3 or 4 of it. And it's like, oh, wow, every over has absolutely hit. And for Rakovich, he's going to get that fullback designation, but let's be real. He looked like a running back this year. And in a league where you have so many teams trying to adopt the Shanahan kind of offense, they're looking for guys that can play fullback, but also like do everything. They can run, they can block, they can catch the short screens and get upfield. And I think for Rakovich, it's, he's going to be a favorite there. Everybody's got to see him play because there's not a lot on those nights. And they got to watch him, kind of run the highlight reel there at the college level. So people are familiar with him. And, I think he's a fun player. And, going back to what you said, we're so used to the call-ups, right? Especially at wide receiver. The wide receivers get hurt all the time. And then you get call-ups to the Senior Bowl. We've seen that a million times. It is interesting this year that how much they intersect, that's probably off the board. Because, you look at a guy like Rakovich. I mean, if one of the, 2 fullbacks in Mobile gets hurt, that seems like a great opportunity for him, especially with, and you could obviously speak more to the Lions than me, but the Jets are still one of those teams that uses a fullback. And speaking of the Lions, they played Nick Bawden all year, the Jets. Right. So they're going to be looking at fullbacks as well. So I think that would have been a good opportunity for Rakovich. So if he shows out in the Shrine, there's obviously teams that are going to have eyes on him.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I don't know if we fully have a combine list yet. I'm sure he'll go there because I think he's probably going to test off the charts because he's not going to be that traditional fullback either. I mean, he's going to play as an H-back. He could maybe even play a little slot receiver, at least a line out there. And he'll probably do a lot of pre-shift motion, pre-snap motions, and things like that. So he was my pick on the offensive side. The defensive side, I'm with you on Jack Jones, but another guy is Jack Sanborn out of Wisconsin. I mean, Trevor, your co-host, Trevor did a phenomenal job breaking him down with Leo Channel out of Wisconsin. And keep in mind, folks, I butcher names all the time. I don't need anybody DMing me how to say a name. I know that. I'm going to butcher them. Just let me be. But Jack Sanborn, I was always impressed with him. I thought, maybe he's not the most athletically gifted player. Some of his initial reads are a little bit slow and he might play a little bit hesitant, but there is that old saying, slow till you know. And I think Sanborn does a good job with that. And I think he attacks upfield. So maybe he's not necessarily a 3-down linebacker, but as a 2-down linebacker, he can play there. But at the Shrine Bowl, I think he's got an opportunity to show he can maybe play all 3 downs in pass coverage and things like that. So we'll see how it plays out, but really excited for the Shrine Bowl. Everybody can check it out. If you're going to Vegas, cool, check it out. I'm not, because I gamble way too much. I would never go to the practice. I'd be at the sports book all day long on the Strip. I would be awake for 150 hours and it'd be a miserable week for me. But the Senior Bowl is coming up and we've got that. And that is just, I mean, it's the best time of the year, man. It is truly the best time of the year. And with the Senior Bowl, we've got the Jets, your New York Jets, my Detroit Lions going down there. And I'm super excited for both rosters. I certainly think the Jets are stacked on the roster side of things, but starting there, I mean, what are your thoughts so far of this Jets roster?
Yeah, I mean, it's loaded, right? When you just look at it, it's an absolutely loaded group. And I think when you look at their needs, and the Jets were bad this year, so of course they have a lot of needs. But you start with that tight end room that they're going to be working with, and it would almost shock you if they don't come out of the draft with one of these guys. And keep in mind the Jets have 2 picks in the top 40. They have 4 picks in the top 40, but after round 1, they still have 2 picks left in that range at 35 and 38. And, that kind of screaming for Trey McBride to maybe be the first tight end off the board. But it's not even just him. You've seen what Charlie Kohler has done as a pass catcher for a long time at the college level. Jeremy Ruckert, who's from Long Island, grew up a Jets fan, has done as a move blocker in Ohio State's zone rushing attack. And Jake Ferguson, a guy that caught 30 passes, I think all 4 years at Wisconsin, but is really the name of his game is his ability as a blocker as well. And that matters so much in the Jets scheme. So I think they're going to be really excited to look at this tight end group, to be honest with you. And maybe if they're not able to sign one in free agency, they draft 2 possibly. That's how, that's how special it could be for them. And they're not done at wide receiver yet. Jahan Dotson, has a little bit of Elijah Moore in his game, where a lot of people might say, well, why would you draft the same guy you took last year? Well, they're dealing with a lot of free agents leaving. Keelan Cole, Jamison Crowder, Braxton Berrios are all free agents. So they're going to have a lot of ability to interchange the slot and out wide. And, if you like Dotson enough, you could take him and play him in the slot while keeping more out wide, which is how they like that. So I think getting Dotson on that roster is one of those things where they might be coming into their early evals right now and go, hey, we really like him, but we don't know how we're going to prioritize him. And you know what it's like after you coach a guy all week, you might be like, oh man, like the Niners, they couldn't walk away from the draft without having Deebo Samuel because they were just obsessed with coaching him all week. And, the last one to me that makes a lot of sense, you look at the offensive line, he's a guy that's played, left guard 2 years, 19 and 21, ironically, and then left tackle in between, sandwich in 2020. And he looks like an interior offensive lineman to me, in Zion Johnson from Boston College. Joe Douglas loves those big, nasty, mauling types. And Zion plays left guard. And, the Jets have their left guard for the next 10 years in Elijah Vera Tucker. But if he shows that he could either play right guard, or a lot of people are wondering, is he going to be able to play center? That might be an interesting scenario for the Jets in the second round. So it's a really good roster. And I think I think they're going to come away with some of these guys actually being draft picks. And that's not shocking. They have a ton of picks, but getting to work with these guys is a real game changer.
No doubt about it. I mean, you get to figure out these guys' practice habits, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, how they respond to the criticism on the field, what their diets are like, how they handle themselves during the week, during this big job interview, essentially. And I mean, I'm with you as far as if there's any way they could find Jahan Dotson potentially in that second round and even possibly Trey McBride, I mean, that to me is a home run. That's a slam dunk for the development of Zach Wilson, the development of your offense, because I like Jahan Dotson. If this group wasn't so deep at wide receiver, I think we'd be talking about him more as a true first round receiver. And there's still a chance he goes in that round. But also with Trey McBride, I mean, Mel Kiper dropped a mock draft today, and he was the 32nd pick to the Packers. I mean, McBride's got first round potential. And I said this a few weeks ago when the tight end group was revealed, like, if Brandon Pettigrew can go in the first round a few years ago to Detroit, why can't Trey McBride? I mean, seriously, this guy's talented. He's kind of got like that perfect blend of everything that you're looking for a tight end. Maybe he's not necessarily that elite athlete and an elite overall player, but I think the upside is there for him to potentially become like a Travis Kelce. That's who I see. I'm not a great pro comparison guy. I'm not going to sell myself short, but I trust what I see. And I think Trey McBride could potentially be that. And I'm with you on the offensive line. If they got Zion Johnson, that would be incredible. And as you mentioned, a mauler, another guy to keep tabs on, Marquise Hayes out of Oklahoma. I think he's got a great mauling style, somewhat, and I hate comparing the two schools, but similar to Cody Ford in a sense. The same with Darian Kennard out of Kentucky, just kind of that mauler, big feet, not necessarily quick feet, but just got that mauling, big hands, can get in that phone booth with you and absolutely control at the line of scrimmage and at the point of attack. So it's really going to be interesting there. But with the Jets having 2 picks in the top 10, we'll get into that. But outside of all of it, your favorite 3 or 4 players at the Senior Bowl thus far between both the Jets and the Lions roster?
Well, starting on the Jets roster, I mean, we talked a lot about McBride, talked a lot about Dotson. I think they're 2 of the best players down there. And then, obviously Zion Johnson, you like him a lot. A guy like Trevor Penning, I think is going to go in the first round, the tackle from Northern Iowa, who's just had a crazy ascent, right? You go back to the 19 film and you're like, ugh, this is not great.
Yeah.
And, he had the spring season where he showed drastic improvement. And this year, in my eyes, he was phenomenal. So I think that to me is, that obviously matters a lot. It's big time. It's huge for him. But let's kick things over to the Lions. I mean, enough about the freaking New York Jets, right? Now, with the Lions here, you got Darian Kennard on that offensive line. So it's not like they don't have anything on the offensive line. Right. I love Connor Hayward, right? And I know you tweeted about him a lot, out of Michigan State. He's somebody that actually really would fit what the Jets want to do as well. Such an interesting player, that versatile fullback that can not just be a blocker, but can catch. I watched a lot of Cam. I want to kind of kick a thought around here. I watched a lot of Cam Thomas today, which is ironic now that we're talking Senior Bowl. And I have to say, like, I understand it from a day 2 perspective, but I can't see him being a day 1 player. And it was, kind of an uninspiring 12 sacks. Unfortunately, I think that he has good power. I think he's kind of falling into this bucket that Trayvon Walker is falling into too, where his best plays, I loved watching him play like 3-tech not like even a true edge rusher. I like what he does as an interior rusher. So that could be a landing spot situation as well. And I think he's, when people are coming down there, people are going to have eyes on him because he's been talked about as a top 40 pick. So it's going to be interesting how a surprising player this year, can the hype go too far? And I'm like ripping off name after name on this roster. You can tell I'm excited about this roster. And
dude, I do the same thing. I'm like, man, I just listed a lot of names.
I know. I'll do one more then just to stop myself here. And, and I don't want to talk about the quarterbacks. I mean, I will, but it's just a matter of like, obviously we cannot wait to watch these guys try to separate from the pack. And I'll go with Jermaine Johnson from Florida State, another edge rusher that's film that I was really blown away by. Just the leap he took this year, the power he plays with, the tenacity he plays with. He really gives tackles a tough time off the edge. They had trouble setting against him. He can counter inside. He's got a lot of pop in his hands. He plays pretty violent and just relentless. So I think Jermaine Johnson, maybe one of the biggest risers this entire year. I mean, what top 50 board was he on over summer? And you look at him now and you won't find a top 50 board without him, in my opinion.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, he's just so long. And like you said, that first step is so explosive. He does a great job creating separation, but he can also win with power. He's got abilities to counter. So I'm intrigued by him. Deangelo Malone, another one, the edge rusher out of Western Kentucky.
Oh
Great
yeah.
length, really good athleticism, kind
It's
of
like a small
skinny.
forward.
Right. Like you see him down there and you're like, okay, that guy should be like, playing for the Knicks right now. Like, I don't understand it,
Yep.
throwing me off, but he's a little bit thinner on the thinner side. Reminds me of a few years ago. I'm drawing a blank on the Ohio State guys that came in. Um, Man, it was Tyquan Lewis and then the other dude. Um, Either
Oh
way.
God. And I really liked him too. It'll come
Yeah.
to me by the end of this show, but I really
Yes.
liked him. But yeah, you're all over it.
Yeah, I mean, they're very comparable as far as height, weight, size, and all of that stuff, kind of play style stylistically. But really, the one in the sleeper that I have here is Josh Paschal, as we talk about defensive lineman out of Kentucky. Really just stout against the run, really good frame, kind of just rocked up a little bit, and he can get after the passer. So I'm excited to see what he can do for Detroit. I think he can bring the energy, and I think when you look at Dan Campbell and what he's looking for, I think Paschal could potentially fall in line there. So we'll see how it kind of all plays out. But really, away from the Senior Bowl, away from the Shrine Bowl, because you and I are going to be giving out this content all week long during the Senior Bowl, all week going up into the event. But the Jets have 2 picks in the top 10, and it's kind of unheard of, especially when you look at the Jets and the Giants, 2 teams in the same market. I mean, that's 4 picks essentially in the city of New York going in the top 10. So they can really do some damage, and there's going to be a lot of attention directed to both these teams. But for the Jets, what do you think that they would do with those 2 picks in the top 10? And really, what do you think actually happens?
So for me, it's hard to now. There's a huge variable in this, and one that I am fascinated by, and that is Mekhi Becton. And I was not exaggerating when I said huge variable. Literally, he is massive, and this is a huge question mark for the Jets. Yeah, he really didn't play this year, and a lot of people understandably are like, well, he got rolled up on, and he did, and it was a bad injury, and guys that size don't rehab like guys, our size. It's
Right.
different. But I mean, let's be real. I do follow this team closely, and the quotes from August training camp before he ever got hurt in a regular season game were not the best coming from the coaching staff in terms of them being, not really thrilled with his conditioning. And Carl Lawson, before he got hurt, was just destroying him week out. And Mekhi Becton was really good as a rookie. Let's not get away from this. So guys get beat in training camp. It happens. But it's another piece of the puzzle where do they have confidence that he is going to be their franchise left tackle for 17 football games next year? And at some point, the Jets, they have to at least start competing to be a playoff, hanging around the playoff hunt in the future, or else those guys are not going to be there for long. So it can be a bigger equation than 17 games. And if they have reservations about that, how do you look at this draft at number 4 and not take one of the top tackles? And I know it's not sexy. It's not fun. It's, they've done this. They did it with Becton. They found a good free agent signing in George Fant, fortunately, and another one in Morgan Moses, who's probably going to walk in free agency this year, which is why another reason you have this question mark. I just look at this draft, Russ, and just going at number 4 and go, I don't know if Kyle Hamilton's a luxury they can afford right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they need to build this thing right around Zach, or else nothing matters. And in my eyes, after Hutchinson and KT go, which if they're there, no brainer, but they won't be there at 4 in my eyes. You have to capitalize on the meat and potatoes of this class that helps your quarterback, and that's one of Evan Neal, Charles Cross, or Icky, Ekwonu. So
Yep.
That's what I think happens at 4, and a lot can change, but that makes the most sense to me. And then you look at 10. They'd love to trade it. Maybe you can get the Steelers to come up for a quarterback. Who knows? If you can't trade it, it really becomes a wild card of Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks. They're going to have their pick of the corners, I think, at 10. Maybe Sauce Gardner comes into play, although the staff doesn't really value corner the way a lot of other coaching staffs do, to be honest with you. And then you maybe even have the chance of Tyler Linderbaum. If you're going to double down and just go, we're going to build the best offensive line we can in front of Zach Wilson, and we'll find a wide receiver at pick 35. So I think they're going to go all in on offense, unless one of Hutch or KT can be there's a play to go up and get them, or one miraculously falls, which I doubt happens. So it's going to be really interesting scenarios at 4-10.
You're absolutely right. I was looking at their roster actually today because I did a radio spot on 1260 The Score out in Syracuse, and when I was looking at the roster, just kind of preparing myself for the show, I saw like Connor McGovern, knowing that he's playing center, but he's got like a 1 year left on his deal, and it's an easy contract to get out of. And I started thinking, and the wheels started spinning, and I'm like, man, like, that would be awesome if they got Tyler Linderbaum. Like, that would be a phenomenal addition to what they do up front. I think that's the safe pick. And you look back at what the Colts did. I think it's a great selection when they took Quentin Nelson at 6. He fell right to their lap. I think this could be the same thing. Linderbaum should be there at 10. And if he is, I think the safe pick would be to build around your quarterback. I do wonder, and I love the fit, and I don't know if they'll be able to trade out. Maybe Philly might move up, like you said, Pittsburgh. But what about David Ojabo from Michigan? Would you be opposed to him at 10? I love that fit, pairing him up with Carl Lawson.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I think this is one that him and Karlaftis are the two guys that Jets fans need to closely monitor throughout this process. And why I say that is, they say Karlaftis tests off the charts, right? And they work him out and they go, you can make a case for him at 4. Now, I'm not ready to go there yet, but if things really play your way where you love him and you are a defense built on the front 4, that's going to be a conversation if all of those things fall into line. And the same goes for Ojabo at 10. Now, my question with Ojabo, another guy I've watched almost all of his pass rush snaps this year, and we know he's a riser. Like, you're watching this year's tape. That's what's there. Mm-hmm. He's a stand-up guy to me right now, Russ. And this is a traditional front 4 that they play with their hand in the dirt, and you are going to have to hold your own at the point of attack. Now, Ajabo's got great speed. He can win outside. We've seen the spin move. He's a true speed rusher. But is he ready to probably put on 20 pounds, get stronger in his lower body, be able to at least survive against the run, which Michigan right now, you watch the film, they basically tell you they don't think he can. They took him off the field most of the time against Georgia in run situations. But you're absolutely right that the pass rush ceiling with him has to be intriguing to every team on the board, where you're looking at it and going, if he returned to school, he could be the number 1 pick next year. And Will Anderson obviously be the number 1 pick, but number 2, number 3, top 5. That's the kind of talent he has, where one more dominant year at Michigan where he rounds out his game. So teams are going to say, well, maybe we should take him in the top 10 because he's so untapped. And that's what the Jets need to figure out. Can he adapt and play in our scheme? And is that ceiling worth a swing on? Or are we too afraid of missing because of how weak our roster is from so many misses over the last half decade?
That's true. I mean, and you're right. Like Kyle Hamilton, they don't have the luxury to necessarily do this. I mean, safeties don't always work out in the NFL. Not saying Kyle Hamilton won't work out. I love the player. I think he's one of the 3 best players in the draft. But beyond that, I mean, you don't have that luxury. You have to build this up correctly. You hit the nail on the head there. So we will see what they do. Obviously, there's a lot of time between now and April. We'll do a lot more talking about the Jets, the draft, and everything else. But I do want to say I remember the player that I compared Deangelo Malone to. It wasn't Jalen Holmes. That was the Ohio State player, but I misspoke. It's actually Kamiko Toure when he was at Rutgers. Kind of that thin frame, similar, but maybe not as explosive, maybe not necessarily the same player, but I don't know. Anyways, this has been so much fun. It's been awesome talking Senior Bowl stuff. We do have the NFL playoffs this weekend. We got, the Rams and the Bucks, so many different games, the Chiefs and the Bills. What's your prediction right here, right now of who's going to the Super Bowl? I'm just going to be straight up with you. Who's going to go to the Super Bowl?
Man, I look at it and think it's going to be the Packers and the Bills, to be honest with you. And I'm with you. I think that there might be bias in there because I think that was my preseason prediction. I know I had Green Bay in there. I can't remember the AFC. It was either the Bills or the Chiefs. Real bold, I know, like literally the chalkiest pick you can make. But as we sit here today, I mean, those are the teams that you feel great about right now. So I think it'll be the Packers and the Bills. But man, this is one of those, like, not career defining, but storyline altering type of games for Josh Allen, because if they lose, everyone's like, well, they built this great team and all of this, and they can't get over the Chiefs. They can't get over that hump, and Dable's going to leave. So then everybody's going to start questioning that. But if they win, everyone's going to be like, is Josh Allen the new king in town? Is he past Mahomes? So you know how this is going to go. And it's going to be a hell of a weekend. I can't wait.
Yeah, it really is. I'm going to be looking at morning lines and spreads and everything else here probably tonight and start placing some bets. But I'm excited, man. And I was way off on Josh Allen, as I think we all were. But it's playoff time. It's the best time of the year. We got the draft. It's been awesome talking with you. It's been great catching up and doing a little bit of draft stuff. Where can people find you on social media and all of your work from Bleacher Report and the stuff that you're going to be doing with Trevor on PFF?
Well, dude, thanks so much. First off, it really has been great catching up, and I'm excited to see you down in Mobile. It's going to be a really good time. So, yeah, I mean, at Connor J. Rogers on Twitter, I post everything there. Trevor and me, we're doing the NFL Stock Exchange pod. If anyone wants to go subscribe, it's wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch on PFF's YouTube. And then at Bleacher Report, everything's in the app. I mean, we do the live mock drafts about once a month right now, which really wears me out in a good way. It's a lot of fun going through all 32 picks, man, live. I got about 30 seconds on each one. So that's been a really fun exercise we started doing about last year. And, man, I'm excited, dude. It's that time of the year. I mean, you blink and then the draft is here, and then you sleep in May, and then you start in June and do it all over again. It's like being Santa Claus, except for the draft. It's a good time.
Oh, it absolutely is. It truly is. But guys, be sure to find him on social media, smash the follow button, listen to him on the Bleacher Report, listen to him on the podcast, the whole nine. Connor, my man, thank you. You guys, of course, can find me on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. But until next time, this is Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast.